Elon Musk, and I know Elon was on your show, and he's here in Austin, huh? And he spent $270 million to elect Trump as president.
What's the most someone donated towards the Harris campaign?
They spent a lot of money on Harris as well.
They spent $1.5 billion just
combined
over the course of a couple of months.
You got it. All right, let me talk about it. So,
Yeah.
60 Minutes has a sterling reputation for investigative journalism. Are they wrong?
But that's not investigative journalism if you change someone's answers. If you ask her a question and she comes with a rambling answer that doesn't make sense, and you edit that out and insert another answer to a different question, it's editing things to make this deceptive editing.
Joe Rogan didn't just interview Bernie Sanders, he obliterated him. What was supposed to be a friendly sit-down turned into a verbal minefield, and Bernie stepped on every single one. He showed up expecting softballs and walked straight into a philosophical cage match with America's favorite human lie detector. And it all started when Bernie tried to casually drop a bomb. Elon Musk spent $270 million to get Trump elected. Except Joe wasn't buying it. He leaned in with that calm, lethal tone, the one that's destroyed more political talking points than entire newsrooms, and simply asked, how much did they spend on Kamala Harris? Suddenly, Bernie was fumbling. He tossed out numbers like confetti, 1.5 billion here, millions there, but the damage was done. Because here's the thing, Rogan didn't have to scream. He just let the facts hang in the air like a guillotine. And Bernie, he stood there like a man who just realized he brought a megaphone to a sniper fight. This is what happens when you spend too much time locked inside legacy media's padded safe space. Bernie came in thinking he'd get a few easy jabs at billionaires and Trump and walk out to applause. But Rogan wasn't playing that game. He forced Sanders to confront the hypocrisy his base never questions. Why is corporate money evil when it backs the GOP, but just necessary when it funds Democrats? Why is Elon Musk a threat to democracy, but Hollywood and big tech funneling billions into Biden's war chest is just fine? You could feel the panic under Bernie's skin. This wasn't MSNBC. There was no edit button, no sympathetic host nodding on cue. Just a man, a mic, and a brutal wake-up call.
Dan, you got to tell me why he is suing ABC. Why he's suing Meta.
Let's just talk about the 60 Minutes
No,
one
but
first.
no, but it's not just
We could go to ABC, but I'm not aware of that one
Well,
either.
George Stephanopoulos said something that he didn't like. But the point is,
What did Stephanopoulos say?
I can't remember. It was I honestly don't remember. But
Rogan didn't interrupt. He didn't grandstand. He just let Bernie talk himself into a corner. And the silence afterward, that was the sound of a narrative cracking. So if you came here thinking this was just another podcast episode, think again. This was a political reckoning. A legendary leftist marched into the lion's den expecting hugs and got mauled by logic. And the best part? Joe didn't even break a sweat. Joe Rogan just served Bernie Sanders the political equivalent of a reality check. And it wasn't pretty. It all started when Bernie took a predictable jab at Elon Musk, claiming he dumped over $200 million into Trump's campaign. It was the kind of headline-ready outrage you hear on cable news every night. But before he could pat himself on the back, Rogan hit him with a nuke. Kamala Harris raised $1.5 billion in just a few months. And just like that, the temperature in the room changed. You could see Bernie scramble. Not physically, but mentally. The gears started spinning, the words got slippery, and suddenly the man known for sticking it to billionaires was dodging accountability like it was his job.
What about the other the other lawsuit
Well,
with the conversation that they had with Kamala Harris, where they edited the answers that she had to make it look more precise?
60 Minutes, they were suing 60 Minutes.
Yes.
Is, to my mind, historically, been around for a very long time for investigative journalism. Are they wrong?
But that's not investigative journalism if you change someone's answers.
All
If you ask her a question and she comes with a rambling answer that doesn't make sense, and you edit that out and insert another answer to a different question that seems more cogent.
He flailed from one talking point to another, trying to outrun the hypocrisy hanging in the air. But Rogan wasn't done. When Bernie tried to pivot, again, this time attacking Trump for allegedly suing 60 Minutes over a Kamala Harris interview, Rogan didn't even blink. He calmly cut through the noise. Hold on. If they edited her answers to make her look smarter, that's not journalism. That's propaganda. Boom. Bernie's defense. A shaky praise session for 60 minutes, calling them historic and reputable, like name-dropping a legacy brand could magically erase manipulation. But Joe wasn't playing along. He shut it down, reminding everyone that being old doesn't make you honest. And this is the part that's hard to watch, because it's not just Bernie flailing. It's the entire woke strategy unraveling in real time. When exposed, they don't reflect. They retreat. They don't clarify. They rebrand the lie. Bernie tried to talk his way out of the corner, but Rogan had him pinned. The calm, collected tone didn't just embarrass Sanders, it exposed the playbook. Distract, deflect, gaslight, repeat. But here's the difference. Rogan doesn't operate in a controlled echo chamber. He doesn't let narratives slip by under a warm blanket of shared bias. He interrogates them, no matter who's talking. Left, right, celebrity, politician, no one gets a free pass. Sanders walked in expecting applause. He left drenched in the cold sweat of truth. And that last moment, when he warned about walking down a dangerous path, yeah, that was the sound of a man realizing he just wandered off the script and into a real conversation. Bernie Sanders pulled a classic move from the political survival handbook. Emotional blackmail disguised as moral concern. Cornered by Rogan's brutal logic and mounting inconsistencies, Bernie played his last desperate card, the "this could happen to you" card. He warned Joe that supporting Trump's lawsuits against media outlets could come back to bite him, that speaking out against journalistic manipulation might open his door to expensive, reputation-wrecking lawsuits. But Joe didn't flinch, not even for a second. Because Rogan knows the game, and more importantly, he knows the difference between defending free speech and defending corruption wearing a press badge. Bernie tried to create fear. He painted this doom and gloom scenario where speaking truth could bring ruin, not just to politicians, but to podcasters, creators, regular people. The unspoken threat was clear. If you criticize the media, you'll be next. But Joe calmly tore that argument apart. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get emotional. He just explained the simple truth. There's a world of difference between being targeted for honest reporting and being called out for manipulating footage to make a candidate look sharp when they clearly weren't. That's not journalism. That's campaign work disguised as news. And Bernie's attempt to conflate the two fell apart instantly. Rogan made it clear. Editing a candidate's answer to make them appear more competent is not protecting democracy. It's stage managing it. And when outlets like 60 Minutes pull those stunts, they deserve every ounce of scrutiny that comes their way. The beauty of this moment, Bernie thought he could shame Joe into silence, that he could emotionally hijack the conversation and turn it into a victim story. But Rogan didn't blink. He said, in essence, if you don't want to get sued, don't lie to your audience. Don't act like a cheerleader and pretend you're a referee. Bernie didn't expect resistance. He didn't expect pushback. And he definitely didn't expect someone who refuses to bow to the guilt tactics that keep legacy media untouchable. By the end, Bernie was mumbling, retreating, grasping at generalities like, I don't know the details. That's what you say when your narrative just collapsed and there's nowhere left to run. He walked into Rogan's studio thinking he'd educate the audience. Instead, he exposed the exact tactics that the public is sick of: spin, scare, and smear. But this time, it didn't work, because this wasn't CNN. This wasn't a university town hall. This was Joe Rogan's arena. And in here, facts beat fear every single time. This was the moment Bernie Sanders fully unraveled. Not with a bang, but with a pathetic whimper. When Joe Rogan asked why Trump is suing ABC, Bernie couldn't even fake a coherent answer. He stumbled, dodged, and muttered something vague about George Stephanopoulos, saying something he didn't like. Joe pressed for specifics. Bernie had none, just empty filler, I honestly don't know. That's when the mask completely slipped. Here's a man who wants to run the country, a man who lectures millions on truth, fairness, and justice, yet can't back up a single claim the moment it's challenged. Instead of dealing in facts, Bernie defaulted to the tired script. Mock Trump, downplay legal action, and pretend everything's a threat to democracy. But Joe Rogan wasn't letting it slide. He calmly laid it out. If major media outlets knowingly spread falsehoods and manipulate coverage to smear a political figure, then lawsuits aren't tyranny. They're the last line of defense against propaganda. Ah yes, Tim Walz, or as he's been lovingly dubbed, Tampon Tim. The man who once fantasized about being vice president is now hallucinating about the Oval Office, all while trying to cosplay as a tough guy. And how does he respond when the media questions his masculinity? With the maturity and composure of a 14-year-old YouTuber in a comment war. Is this what passes for presidential material now? A Midwestern governor puffing out his chest on TV like he's auditioning for a WWE promo? Tim, buddy, you don't need a cage match to prove your masculinity. You need a spine and a mirror. Meanwhile, while Bernie Sanders was melting into a puddle of woke talking points on Joe Rogan's podcast, Tim Walz was out here bragging about changing truck tires and flexing his biceps like that's the new national policy. Let's get one thing straight. Real masculinity isn't about how many tires you can change or how loudly you grunt. It's about character. The modern left has managed to reduce manhood into a parody. They don't stand up for truth. They just cosplay strength on TV. They don't lead, they perform. Walz and Sanders are just two sides of the same cracked coin. One gets wrecked in an interview, the other wants to punch his way into relevance. Spoiler alert, both fail. But the good news? People are catching on. The fake macho act, the fake moral high ground. So next time Tim Walz wants to prove he's a tough guy, maybe he should try leading with facts instead of fists. And maybe Bernie should try answering a question without spinning into a lecture about Trump, or capitalism, or climate justice. But hey, don't hold your breath. And that wraps up this video. If you're tired of fake leaders, biased media, and politicians who think masculinity is something you shout instead of show, then you're in the right place. Like the video, subscribe for more truth bombs, and I'll see you in the next one.